Every year, strange unsolved cases that have been cold for years become solved cases. These are some mysterious missing person cases that have been cold for years that could be solved in 2022. Number 5. The cold case involving the missing person case of Joel Wells began in Hazard, Kentucky on the evening of January 15, 1994. It was an extremely cold day, and some stores were closing early due to a snowstorm. Joel was 21 at the time of his disappearance. He was hanging out with friends at the Black Gold Shopping Center. At some point during the evening, an argument broke out between Joel and another one of the friends. What this argument was about has never been revealed, but Joel decided to remove himself from the situation. He walked away from the group. For some reason, he then ran to the Burger King, which was one of the shops that had closed due to the storm. He banged on the door, asking to be let in. The employees didn't think this was someone who just wanted food though. He seemed to be in distress. The entire area was on high alert after a robbery gone wrong at a gas station the day before. So naturally, the Burger King employees contacted the police. Police arrived minutes later, but by this time, Joel was already gone. Joel was last seen in the parking lot of a nearby Walmart, asking people for help and a ride home. It's not known if anybody offered him a ride though. Joel was reported missing the following day and a search began. Dogs tracked Joel's scent up to a nearby river where it was lost. A search of the area, including the water, turned up no clues as to what had happened to him. Joel's case is so mysterious because there are so many unanswered questions. It's not known what the friends were arguing about and whether it could have caused his panic. Whether substances or alcohol had been consumed is another unanswered question. Police have not found evidence that the disappearance was related to the robbery gone wrong, as the criminal in that case was caught. Joel was 6 feet tall and weighed 160 pounds. He had brown hair, blue eyes, and sometimes went by his middle name of Mark. Anybody with information that could solve this strange mystery should contact the Hazard Police Department at 606-436-2222. Number 4. Tammy Kingery was a 37-year-old mother of 3 when she vanished from her home in North Augusta, South Carolina. She'd been suffering from depression and had been acting strangely the day she disappeared. But the circumstances of her disappearance make this a strange cold case. Tammy had left her home early on the morning of September 20th, 2014, to go for her shift as a nurse at a nearby nursing home. Things had been difficult for Tammy recently, and a number of times she had called in sick because of mental health difficulties. On the day she vanished, her coworkers noticed her acting extremely agitated and checking her blood pressure multiple times per day. It's not known if she found anything out of the ordinary when she checked, but she was clearly not feeling well. She called her husband, Park, and asked him to drive her home because she didn't feel well enough to drive. At home, she decided to take a nap while Park took their 2 sons to run errands. Their daughter was already out at this time. About 2 hours later, Park returned home. The front door was locked as he had left it, but there was no sign of Tammy inside. Instead, she'd left a note to say she had gone for a walk and would be back soon. Strangely though, Tammy's keys, wallet, purse, and cell phone were all found inside. The front door would need to have been manually locked after she left, so how she managed this isn't clear. Park went out to search for Tammy with no luck, and 4 hours after she was last seen, she was reported missing. Police searches turned up no new information, and what happened to Tammy remains a mystery. As Tammy was suffering from depression, it's possible she decided to take her own life, but no body was ever found. Waterways in the area weren't searched, but police concluded that if she ended up in the water, her body would have been found without the need for a dive team. Tammy and Park's marriage hadn't been as happy as Park thought it was, according to Tammy's family, but they don't believe she would have left her children behind to start a new life. Tammy had blonde hair, hazel eyes, and was 5'4" and weighed 125 pounds when she disappeared. Anyone with information that could solve this cold case should contact Edgefield County Sheriff's Office at 803-637-5337. Number 3. Reeves Kemp Johnson hadn't been seen for almost 2 weeks when his father asked police to make a welfare check on his son. Reeves lived in Kittery, Maine in 1983, while the rest of his family lived in Pennsylvania, but they still kept in contact. He was last seen at work on February 3rd and hadn't called his family since then. Police found Reeves's home abandoned. It had snowed heavily 3 days after Reeves was last seen, and none of the snow had been disturbed in front of his home. His pipes were also frozen, and there was nobody found inside. It was clear Reeves had been missing for some time. Strangely, while police were checking his home, Reeves's red Volkswagen was being towed to an Exxon station in the Elwyn Park area of Portsmouth. A man asked a mechanic for some quick repairs as he was planning on heading south. 6 days later, he came back to retrieve the car, but the mechanic wouldn't take a check, so Reeves left without the car. 2 days later, someone called offering to sell the car to the mechanic in return for payment. When police managed to track down the mechanic, he identified Reeves from a photo. The repairs weren't the only purchases Reeves, or someone pretending to be him, had tried to make since he was last seen. After he was seen at work, Reeves's bank account was emptied. He then purchased $146 worth of groceries with a check for the emptied account. On February 9th, he went to Portsmouth and purchased 2 pairs of thermal underwear, again by check. The clothes were in 2 different sizes, neither of which he would have fit. The same day, he purchased a car stereo. None of these purchases fit Reeves's typical behavior. 2 weeks after his last day at work, someone claiming to be Reeves called to ask for his paycheck to be sent to him. After Reeves's family learned that the check had been sent, they staked out his mailbox. Eventually, a man they didn't recognize came to collect the check. He was 5'10" with long blonde hair. He wore green overalls and a red hat. Reeves's mother tried to get a photo of him, but he held up his hand and completely obscured his face. When they confronted him, he told the family that Reeves was staying with him and offered to take them to see him, but ran away before they got the chance. Reeves did have a number of health issues, including hypoglycemia, and he had previously suffered with mental health problems. It's not known if this had anything to do with his disappearance. His family now just wants answers. Johnson was 5'7", weighed 130 pounds, and had long brown hair and sideburns and a mustache when he vanished. The case was recently reopened by Detective Brian Cummer at Kittery Police Department. Anyone with information can contact him at 207-439-1638. Number 2. This year marked 31 years since Brenda Louise Condon disappeared from her place of work at Carlsbad Tavern in Pennsylvania. She left behind 2 children and a strange case that has since gone cold, but her loved ones still hope her disappearance can be solved. Brenda was discovered missing on February 27th, just a few days before her 29th birthday. It was about 6 p.m. when staff arrived at the bar to find it abandoned. The lights were off inside and the door was open, but there were no signs of Brenda. Brenda had been working the evening shift the night before and was supposed to have closed up after last call, then reopened a few hours later for the day shift. But the day shift had never begun. Brenda had cleaned up after the evening shift, but she hadn't managed to lock up before she disappeared. To make the case even stranger, the black boots she'd been wearing the night before were found neatly placed beside the door in the men's restroom. There were no signs of a struggle, and no indication as to what could have possibly happened. When staff learned Brenda hadn't returned home either, she was reported missing. However, it wasn't until a few days later, when she missed a visitation from her children, that the investigation into her disappearance began. Police were able to piece together a good idea of the hours leading up to her disappearance. The day before Brenda was discovered missing had been completely normal. The last conversation she'd had with her boyfriend, Greg Palazzari, had been about what she wanted to do for her birthday. She'd gone to work at the bar, which was relatively quiet that evening. It was mostly regulars who described Brenda as her usual chatty self. There were only a few people there that nobody was able to recognize, 3 men who police have been unable to identify. Eventually, it was time for the bar to close, and she announced the last call. She was last seen by patrons sometime between 12:45 and 1:15 a.m. as the last of the customers left. It was a few hours later. A vendor arrived at the bar to restock the cigarette machine. By this time, Brenda had already disappeared, though he noticed her car was still in the parking lot. By the time police began their investigation, the area had seen heavy snow, potentially disturbing any evidence. A search utilized helicopters, sniffer dogs, and volunteers, but no sign of Brenda was ever found. In the years since, there have been numerous theories put forward. Brenda's ex-husband was ruled out as a suspect. He and Brenda had ended their marriage on good terms, and he let her see their children whenever she wanted. Police also didn't believe Greg to be a suspect, even though it later emerged that there were rumors about him selling illegal substances. But police didn't think his work had anything to do with Brenda's missing person case. It also didn't seem like a robbery gone wrong, as there was no money or alcohol out of place at the bar, and no sign of a struggle. It really does seem that Brenda disappeared into thin air. Police believe there are people they've spoken to who know more than they've let on, and they're still looking to speak to 3 unidentified men. Brenda is described as 5'3" and weighing 110 pounds when she vanished. She had brown hair, blue eyes, and a ring of roses tattooed around her ankle. The 3 unidentified men were described as all being white. One was between 38 and 40 years old, 6'2" with a blue jacket and jeans. The second was between 25 and 20, 5 foot 8 inches tall and wearing a black leather coat and jeans. The third was about 50, 5 foot 8, with a dark jacket, dark slacks, and a brown plaid shirt. Pennsylvania State Police are investigating this cold case and can be contacted at 814-355-7345. Number 1. The disappearance of Leon Monsei is one of the strangest missing person cases that remains unsolved. Leon disappeared in 1982 when he was just 21 years old, and he's never been seen since. Leon was married at the time to a woman named Irene, and they had a 3-year-old daughter together. They were in the middle of a divorce, and Leon had had multiple affairs, but Leon was still living with them while the divorce processed. On the night of February 18, 1982, he left the house in Bel Air, Ohio, telling Irene he would be back later. He also allegedly told his brother that he had a hot date. News reports at the time claimed Irene believed he had gone to see a mutual friend named Ted. Leon later was seen by many friends at the bar. Nobody noticed anything unusual about him during this time. It wasn't until the following day that Irene realized Leon was missing. He didn't show up for work, and she got a call from his boss asking where he was. It was payday, and Leon never missed work unless he was sick, so his absence was extremely unusual. Later that day, Leon's mother was on a call when the operator said she had an urgent call from Leon on the line, and they needed to hang up so that she could put the call through. His mother hung up, but the call from Leon never came through. By this point, Leon had already been reported missing. A few people had seen someone they thought was him in bars in the area, and Irene had been searching those same locations with no luck. 2 days after Leon disappeared, his car was found in a ditch on the side of the road. According to witnesses, it had been there since the night Leon disappeared. The door was open, but the car keys were missing from the ignition. Found inside the car were multiple empty containers of alcohol, Leon's cigarettes, and his winter coat. There was mud splatters up the side of the car and inside the vehicle, but again, no sign of Leon. His friends and family claimed it was strange for him to leave without his cigarettes, as he always had them on his person. The idea of him going out on a cold February night without his coat was also odd, but if he had been drinking, it's possible he wasn't feeling the cold. On the face of it, it looked like he had had an accident and gotten injured, but the background behind his disappearance only makes things stranger. In the months leading up to his disappearance, he had grown extremely paranoid. He wouldn't let his wife or daughter leave the house without him, and wouldn't let anybody take their pictures. He also received a threatening letter days before he vanished. A threat against his life had been written using letters cut out from a magazine, warning him to leave something alone. According to Irene, he hadn't been concerned about the note and had thrown it away. Leon would often get into bar fights, and his family described him as someone who would get on with anyone, but it seems once he had alcohol inside him, he could have had a short temper. In one fight, he was struck across the chest with a metal pole. For months after he vanished, Irene felt she was being stalked by a man in a truck. For 2 years, she would see the man lingering outside of her home, wearing dark clothing. Irene believes this was Leon, and he had wanted to see his daughter. However, she also received anonymous phone calls from someone that told her Leon was no longer alive, and parts of his body had been dumped in a river. Officially, Leon was declared to no longer be alive, and his mother was given the payout from his life insurance policy. Leon is described as being 5 foot 6 feet at the time of his disappearance, weighing 145 pounds. He had brown hair and brown eyes. What truly happened to Leon remains a mystery. Anyone who can help solve this case in 2022 should contact Belmont County Sheriff's Department at 740-695-7933. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.